When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. This is Mark Ludlow, Fearless Mindset Podcast, and I'm honored to have Frank Mir, the two-time UFC champion, on the show today. And thanks for scratching out a little bit of your time today to join us and share your experiences. And
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for working with me with just being a busy schedule, father and a husband, and trying to be a professional fighter at the same time. So,
how do you do it? What's your trick for sanity?
You know what, though? Like, the same thing I do, like, sometimes people ask me what my favorite fight is. Yeah. And I always tell everybody my second time I fought Nogueira, because it's a very easy thing to teach people what I'm most proud of as a martial artist that I've developed. And that's my ability to just always adapt, improvise, overcome type mentality, going, okay, here I was in a fight with the second time I fought Nogueira. The first time I knocked him senseless, knocked him out after dropping him 4 times. So probably a little bit overconfident on my part, or just, hey, it's fighting, things happen. He caught me with a really great shot right on the ear, wobbled my inner ear, so legs go numb. I fall down, I grab onto a single, I'm holding on, and then before the fight, we talked about, hey, let's not end up in a guillotine, because that's probably his best move now. Yeah. And I end up in a guillotine. So I'm a minute into this fight, I've been rocked, I'm in his best submission, it's not looking good. No. But instead of sitting there going, damn, this is overwhelming, I just start breaking things down. Like, okay, what is my most immediate issue I have to deal with right now? I'm like, I got to relieve the choke. So I pulled through to my hips. I'm like, okay, well, now I got to get in a better position. I did as I swept him, he tried to do a peek out, and I stepped over. And that's how I pretty much treat life. It's like, look, sit down, take a breath, figure out what's going in front of you, and just break it down. Like, okay, well, what do I have to get done? Well, I got to do A, B, and C. All right. Is A even available for you to do right now? No. Well, instead of sitting there crying about it, skip over to B. Let's get that taken care of. Let's start eliminating these things one at another, and just, use strategy and tactics. But let's not ever sit here and just feel bad. Oh, man, this is overwhelming. You have about a second to feel overwhelmed, and now get to work,
You almost have the Navy SEAL mindset. When you did explain that to me, I thought I was talking to a Navy SEAL.
Oh, really? Well, yeah. It's not a bad area to be in.
Yeah, but that's almost the mindset they have to conduct operations. It's just almost the same thing. They shut off.
I tell people all the time, combat, martial arts, warfare is very universal. Mm-hmm. People want to get caught up in, well, this is the details of my art. Here's the thing, being a good martial artist, being a good combatant, I feel if you really take them to the core, well, it's people's brains. It's our mind versus your mind. Yeah. And that's universal. Now, obviously, a Navy SEAL has different equipment and rules of engagement than I do in a duel, in a cage. But the same thing is, it's me versus human. You know what I mean? Like, right. You versus yourself, the environment, a person in front of you. And so that's why I think the universal strategies.
Absolutely. Frank, while I got you on, what is your advice to the businessmen and women out there right now going through COVID-19, from your mindset in the octagon, being a fighter, to the business world? What kind of advice can you offer those people that may be tuning in, listening to what you have to say? What can you say to those guys?
Well, the first thing I say, and I've had to remind my wife about this quite a bit, because obviously it can be frustrating that the world's handling it in a different way than maybe that you or yourself would think of it should be handled. But it's like the TSA. Mm-hmm. I have to go there and they tell me to take my shoes off. I think it's ridiculous. Sure. I don't think it's saving any lives, or it's making me any safer. But hey, it's the process. I got to deal with it. So I wear shoes that are easy to come off and on when I fly and travel. So that's one point I kind of tell people, instead of sitting here going, man, this situation sucks. Like, it's not in your control. Unless you're the governor of whatever state you're living in, you don't have much say in the matter. So let's go ahead and get past the feeling bad that, this sucks and this is stupid, or I don't agree with this. It is what it is. Go ahead and move forward. And then now it's just breaking down what's within your ability to get done. Like, okay, like my business has to be this now. I'm like, all right, well, then that's what you have to work with. There's no reason to throw the towel in. Just, again, what are the new rules? Like, right now my training from March until about July, I couldn't really go to the gym and train with other people. The gyms, as far as that type of grappling and boxing and sparring with guys was very limited.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, well, if I can't do that, you know what? I'll work on my injuries and I'll go lift weights like crazy because that is available to me. So instead of sitting here, again, feeling bad for myself or going, oh, the situation sucks, I've now, I take my kids with me. We go to Nick Best, train with him, Steve Dottie, my other conditioning coach. Like, we go and we find gym time. Now everybody can social distance and be appropriate and fall within the social norm, but I'm still improving on me as a human being. I've found something that I can get done that is within my control, and that's what I take care of.
Right. Good advice. Control what you can control.
Control what you can control.
There's going to be a lot of EP agents, bodyguards, the younger guys, 20-year-old, female than male getting in the industry. What advice can you give to that young bodyguard, male and female, trying to get in this business? What advice do you give them from a fighter perspective, from a warrior's perspective?
Well, obviously, again, the most important thing is constantly pushing and keeping your mind sharp. And just because, look, I was a world champion, but I still go to the gym and train every day because those skills are still perishable. Not only on a technical aspect of timing, but mental toughness, the ability to push through. So sometimes I meet guys that were phenomenal warriors, but they were training all the time when they were in service. Then they get out, and I'm like, when's the last time you actually trained? When's the last time you went and shot? When's the last time you've been on a mat with somebody trying to drag your face across it? And they're like, well, I don't have time for it. And I'm like, no, you are in the business of being a warrior. You got to constantly train. You have to find the time, figure it out, plan for it, because that brain, that warrior mindset is a perishable skill. It can lessen. And if you're not in there constantly pushing yourself, being in miserable situations, you will get weaker. I don't care how tough you were at one point, you'll lose it. You'll lose your edge. So I always tell guys, I have a lot of friends I train with that are police officers. And I'm like, hey, look, I feel like it's your duty to be in here training your hands-on combat because it's hard, it pushes you, it tests your mettle, and it's necessary for you to be a less violent human being. Because to me, and I always tell them this, my biggest problem with law enforcement, skip off on that tangent, but just because I'm touching on it ever so slightly.
Sure.
I hate seeing two officers struggling with a guy on the ground, and they have to because that guy's being an idiot. He shouldn't be doing what he's doing. But now they have to resort to lethal force because they couldn't stop him earlier. Right. And I feel like as a police officer, anybody like a bodyguard, look, you have to be very good at hands-on type of situation because you can basically de-escalate situations from becoming deadly. Because, like I tell people, like, I wouldn't have to wrestle around with a guy for 3 minutes on the ground. He's not going to get to my weapon. He's probably going to be asleep in the next 15 seconds. And now we can talk about what we have to do next. And it never got to that point because I'm confident in my abilities, but I'm training them all the time. So that's why I got a lot of guys now that are on with our Las Vegas Police Department that train with me. I'm like, hey, come in the gym. You got to train. You'll be a much more proficient warrior because you'll have other tools at your asset. So as a bodyguard, I would say that it's very similar. If you have to revert to a sidearm or your weapon in situations that start getting hairy, it's like, well, you kind of didn't have a middle ground. You had either I can talk my way through this, avoid confrontation, or I went to lethal force. There has to be a force paradigm where you're working your way through. We're like, okay, I'm going to have to put my hands on this guy, and I'm going to make this very quick and efficient and get this over with so I don't have to, unless I'm left with no choice, escalate it to the next level.
Sure. Now, if you're going to leave if you ever left, because I hear you're kind of in free agency right now. I talked to Ron. I talked to Ron a little bit, and he said you're kind of exploring what your next option, your next contract will be. I guess things going on. You're in the free agency world at the moment, looking for your next fight. And how's that looking for you, being your own manager? How's that looking?
Well, I still use Malky Kawa, who's John Jones's manager. Okay. I don't even know if we really consider him a manager anymore. We're all just been friends for like the last, 10 years now. So he's helping me look for stuff. And, and honestly, I just want to stay active as a fighter. So the biggest stall right now between my fight career is me and my wife arguing about what I should fight for. because I've had fight offers where it's like, oh, we're going to fight for that amount. I'm like, cool, it works. It's just, you're not fighting for that amount. So I'm like, so now we're getting to the point where I'm like, babe, I want to fight. I like fighting. It keeps me sharp. It's something that gives me motivation to be in the gym because I know I have a test. You know what I mean? If I told you I'm going to test you on the SATs, you're going to be in the study. If you don't have a test, very few people are going to test themselves and push unless there's a reason for it. And I like giving myself that reason. So right now, you know, just her and Malky are on one side and I'm on the other. You know, me and my one of my main training partners and friends, coaches, is Carl Prince. We're like, hey, dude, as long as it pays for the airfare and I get some change afterwards, let's just fight, you know?
The warrior mentality. I love it. So are you actually your own manager? I was listening to your podcast, and it sounds like you're running your own business pretty much for the most part.
Well, you know what? As a fighter, almost all fighters are kind of their own managers making decisions. But Malky still helps me out a considerable amount. Same with Carl. Carl is like my trainer, but also like a manager. And how I think that when people tell me this, you know, I always have the same thing. Like, hey, if you bring me, you know, someone comes on and says, hey, by the way, I'll pay you this amount of money to do this. I'm like, cool. Here's 10% for finding it for me. I don't feel like fighters should have to turn things down because that wasn't brought from their manager. If anything, it's only, to me, their manager should, hey, man, you should get on the ball because other people are bringing me financial opportunities. If you want the money, then you bring it to me. But for the most part, no, Malky is still, and my wife, you know, are my probably main managers, you know. My wife probably more so than anybody.
I believe that. The wife runs the ship at the house. Happy wife, happy life, as they say. Yeah, absolutely. I noticed, I've been listening to your podcast. You seem to have a very sharp business mind in this industry of MMA, UFC, and the other organizations. I did notice, pick that up about you, about the business mind you do have about the industry. And where did that come from? Is it a trial and error?
Yeah, trial and error. What do they say? Experience. That's when you get the test and they give you the answers afterwards, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so, you know, I've been fighting professionally for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So just a lot of trial and error. And then I think that because I'm very open to things and I'm very, I put myself in a lot of situations that maybe a lot of people would look at and go, hey, man, that might not be a good idea. Especially my wife. She loves being able to tell me, I told you that was a bad idea. But I go ahead and go forward because to me, experience and more exposure I have to different ideas and different things, to me, as long as you're not losing your house over it and you're not getting permanently hurt, it's a learning experience, you know. I've learned a lot more through my losses than I ever have through my victories. And that's not just fight mentality, that's business mentality. You know, I feel like, you know, when you get your butt kicked, that's the best teacher I've ever met in my life.
Amen. Amen to that. I mean, you learn, like in boot camp, how many times did I get my rear end kicked by the drill instructor? I had to keep pushing. If I didn't push, I wasn't going to graduate from boot camp. It just, every day was a day of tests and trials. Let's see. What other questions do I have? Feel free to speak freely if something comes to your mind.
Oh, yeah, no, as you go. Okay. I just wanted, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, your opportunity to ask me stuff, so I just wanted to make sure I get just.
Yeah, if you know, we have EP agents trying to get into high-end security stuff. You know, that's the most sought after, being a bodyguard. Let's say for Michael Jordan, or you know, as just an example, or Tiger Woods. What should the new EP agents be focused on? Because I know you're in combat arts and all that. What do you see from your end? Because you've had people protect you from the crazy crowds in Las Vegas. What would you share with those guys that want to take their game, their brand to the next level in the EP industry, like what Ron and I are doing?
Well, I think that you want to make sure that your client realizes that you are an asset to him. And I don't necessarily mean that's always just because I can kick someone's butt, because your physical confrontations are not going to be happening on a regular basis. You know, we're not in the middle of a war-torn, you know, third world where it's like, well, you know, if you don't fight on a regular basis, you're not going to get me out of this bar. And so I think that, you know, being a problem solver is probably the greatest asset that somebody in executive protection could possibly have. I like, when I've ever worked with people that have helped me, I go to a big event and I have my wife or my kids with me. You know, it only takes about 30 seconds for someone to talk to me to realize where my priorities are. I don't mind people coming up and taking pictures or interviewing me or talking to me, but, you know, make sure that my kids don't get shoved to the side, and keep an eye on my wife. And so I kind of, as a client, I kind of give them the immediate rundown of what my goals are. And then within that, that has to be some of the best guys I've ever worked with usually solve a problem before I realize that I need to ask for it. Like, oh, hey, by the way, I'll look over and like, hey, no, man, we got your wife in the green room. The kids, we went ahead and got food taken care of for them. We're good. I'm like, oh, thank you. You know, so I think that always resonates with the client, because it resonated with me whenever I've had to use EP, because it's like, wow, I didn't even have to sit there and go, hey, man, you don't see this as a problem? Can you fix this for me? I think you keeping alert and keeping an eye of what the situations are. And at the end of the day, my best guys that I've ever worked with didn't necessarily know how to fight. I don't know if they did or not, because they solved problems before they ever became a problem.
Makes sense. Yeah, being situationally aware of your environment.
Right. Knowing who your client is, knowing what the situation is, reading the room, and then again, just identifying what issues there are and going, hey, you know, I took care of it. That guy was getting loud. I didn't wait for me to say, hey, that guy's annoying me. They went there and realized, okay, this guy is obviously not here to have a good time. He wants to make himself, you know, maybe Facebook famous by getting his face, you know, kicked in by you. So let me eliminate and move this guy out before it even becomes to that.
So being an expert in body language, would you say that's a big learning thing?
Huge. Well, I think that also goes to being situational awareness. You know, I teach in martial arts when I teach my seminars, which both work for professional fighters and for just street fighting. You know, I worked for 9 years as a bouncer here in Vegas, so I had to be in many altercations that, you know, dealt with, and I call those civilian duels. Right. When two guys want to fight each other. You know, people call it a fight. I'm like, a fight's five guys all trying to kill each other and grabbing rocks and beer bottles. You're probably not going to be in one of those. You're probably going to be in a penis measuring contest where it's going to be one-on-one. And so I showcase abilities in that en route. And one thing that I've always where we start with that? Hold on a second, review, because my brain, I was thinking about something.
Just the pissing contest, you know, people getting into the...
what was the question again? How did I get there?
Oh, studying behaviors before they happen.
Oh, yeah, nonverbal communication. So that's one thing, again, reading the room. And I always teach, sorry, that's what I wanted to get to. I forgot it.
Sorry.
See, too many years of getting punched in the head. The OODA cycle. And I tell people, like, hey, I read about this guy, Colonel Boyd, the OODA cycle, and it's very appropriate towards civilian duels also. Is the first rule is I have to observe. If I'm not aware of a threat, I don't care how dangerous you are, you're caught with your pants down. You're helpless. They have the element of surprise now, you know, which, you know, Sun Tzu type of, you know, hey, I just gave you an advantage. So the first step to anything is observation, right? Absolutely. I have to be aware of what's going on. So you want to be very big on nonverbal communication, reading people, looking and going, hey, man, that guy, you know what? Something's not right about him, so maybe now I can focus in that there's something going on, and now I can start maybe it's like a, you know, hey buddy, what's up, how's it going, and start talking to him. Let me start hearing now the tone of your voice, see where you're at. Are you just socially awkward? You might just be socially awkward, or this might be a potential threat, and through nonverbal communication, you can pick up on it. And the sooner you observe something, now you can start orientating yourself towards, okay, I got to start making decisions on how I'm going to approach this. But once again, until you observe it, you don't know what's coming. And so that's why you know, there was actually a book that I loved. I read, it was a guy from Florida. It was FBI investigator. And reading that book, not only did I started reading it because I wanted to be better at reading people during fights. but it also helped me just in my business world of just starting to read I use it right now to this day. It's why I always bring my wife with me to whenever I meet people, because when they're staring at her when she asks them a question, they don't realize I'm staring at them. I'm trying to not only see how they verbally answer the question, but how they physically answer it,
Reading people, reading the body language.
It's very important.
One thing I learned in the EP industry when I was a young buck, 30 years old, getting into business, I learned my biggest strength was verbal Aikido, my verbal de-escalation.
Yeah.
That was huge. If you can get that principle away from that issue off the X without pulling something out, throwing a punch, get them in the vehicle, leave, you've won the game. You've won without throwing anything. And that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's why when I worked at...
Go ahead.
It's huge. Well, and I think that's why I tell people to train, because a lot of times, it happened to me so many times when I was a bouncer in the Rhino. I would go and talk to somebody, and, a lot of times people, hey, you have a couple drinks, there's a misunderstanding. And because I was secure with who I was willing to deal with some shit coming my way, backhanded remarks, a little bit of the penis measuring contest occurring. But I sat there and evaded it and avoided it because I was secure enough to know, hey, we're going to get to this. Let me at least give you the benefit of the doubt that maybe you just don't understand the situation. But a lot of guys can't use their verbal Aikido because they're not secure with themselves. So the minute all of a sudden somebody starts saying something that they find to take personal, all of a sudden now it just changes. And I've watched bouncers do it. And again, that's where my experience in street fights more has come from, where I'm like, we had the guy out the door. He was about to sign his bill. But because he made some kind of comment about, that questioned your manhood, now you became emotional. Now you got involved, and now we're fighting somebody instead of getting the bar paid and this guy having a good story to tell his friends to invite more people over. Now we're in the back writing reports. The police have to show up. We all messed up because you weren't secure enough with yourself to keep up the verbal Aikido. They might have known the right words and understood, but the minute all of a sudden it became personal, so for you to be good at that comes from self-confidence. And again, I think that comes from being in the gym, constantly training, sharpening those tools. We can look at somebody and go, hey, relax. You know what I mean? Okay, yes, you can kick my ass. All right. But hold on. At the end of the day, this is what I need done and what I need you to accomplish. And if we can all be friends at the end of this, and go that route.
And sometimes if they're so paralyzed by the emotion, they can't think straight. I've learned to throw a joke out there.
Absolutely.
Totally to change the mindset. And they go, where did that come from? And then their face will go from a block to huh? And then you just throw them off what they're ready to do. And it just got to catch people off guard.
Absolutely.
Verbally. Well,
and also, too, people, Mayamato Musashi, Book of Five Rings, I'm a big fan of. Mm-hmm. He talks about catching. Emotions are catching. So if I walk up to a situation, and again, I'll put it in the parameters of what I have experience in.
Sure.
I walk up, the bartender's waving me over. There's already one bouncer there dealing with a guy, and there's an issue. When I walk over, I'm smiling. Hey, man, what's going on? This is going on. All right, hold on, take a deep breath. Let's get through this. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. But if I would have walked up with a scowl on my face, chest puffed up, I'm going to show you who's the boss here, I'm not going to get any kind of cooperation, because now this guy his wife sitting next to him, or the girl he finds attractive is sitting next to him. And now there's an ego put on the line where I come over smiling, laughing. Hey, guys, we're friends. Hey, we're on the same team. We all came here to have a good time, right?
Right.
Everybody wants to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
No one really wants to have a bad time. It ain't you came tonight, I want to go get my... I
think we lost him. Huh. Must be in a dead area.
Yeah, that was weird. Hello?
We got you back.
Yeah, sorry. Just kicked me out for a second. I don't know.
It's all good.
So what you're saying about making a joke, you and I actually have the same mentality with that. If I walk up, I can either add fuel to a person who's sitting there and he's sketchy. If I walk up, hey, what's going on, man? Why are you standing there? Why are you, people become defensive, people have egos. Where if I'm like, hey, buddy, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, are you all right? Everything, what are you asking me? Oh, no, man, you looked upset. I was just concerned. Hey, you know what I mean? If I'm bothering you, I apologize. That very much, helped me get into less fights with people. Because then, you know, there's a certain situation where just, I'm sure you've dealt with, where it's like, all right, this guy just, he's not going to take this. You know, he came here to get into a fight. And okay, well, once my brain identified that, like, I've never actually, in probably the multiple of hundreds of altercations that I got into at the Rhino, no one, I take that back, once a guy threw the first punch on me. Every other time I got in an altercation, the minute my brain went, oh, well, this is about to become violent and physical, well, I'm going to be violent and physical first. You know what I mean? I don't have to wait for you to, where this isn't a gunslinging contest where, well, he went for his gun first. I'm like, well, no, your mannerism, the way you moved towards me, the tone of voice showed me that I knew where this was going. Right. I tried to avoid it. Sure. Obviously, I'm not going to just go ahead and, you know, put your teeth through the back of your head. I have maneuvers that I use that are that don't leave a mark, that they're much more, you know, compliant with joint manipulation. And okay, boom, I'm going to lock you up, and we're going to, maybe I can now de-escalate it to where you realize that this is a futile route you've chosen, and I don't want to go this route either. Like, I'm not going to sleep any better tonight because I beat you up. I train every day with world champions. Me beating up you is not going to put a feather in my cap.
Absolutely.
You telling me that, hey, man, you coming back in a week saying, hey, man, I was having a bad day. The wife was yelling at me. I'm glad, man. I apologize. I was kind of a dick. The way you handled it was great. That puts a feather in my cap. Because to me, I'm like, oh, wow, I showed compassion, was understanding that you're a human being with thoughts and feelings also, and we were able to get through this together. And now I don't have a guy who's waiting with a gun out in the parking lot for me.
Even your own life. And your family.
Yeah, you know, and that's what I always tell bouncers. When you deal with people, like, just remember, you know what I mean? Like, if sometimes they're unavoidable on confrontation, but make sure that you always think it's worth it. That was my always thing. I never want to sit inside of a jail cell going, that was dumb. Why did I do that? I always want to be like, hey, man, that guy came over and he slapped my wife on the butt. He absolutely deserved to have his arm broke. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in trouble, but I'm okay with it, you know, like, so as long as you're okay with it, that's always my kind of the rule I live by.
Absolutely. Yeah. Makes total sense. I know a lot of the listeners are going to be military guys, law enforcement, veterans, and they're probably all wondering, what do you got going on in your profession right now? Do you have anything you're looking at, possible an engagement in the cage here in the future with anybody? That's probably
no, right now, again, like I said, alluded to a little bit earlier, I've had opportunities to continue fighting, but then the wife wasn't happy with the amount of money, and I just want to fight. So right now, we have one deal that hopefully we'll find out about the end of the week that appeases her a little bit more. But right now, I just live the life of a martial artist. You know, I train every day, and now, because my kids are also martial artists, my son's focused more on football, but at least the weight training and stuff like that we do together. Yeah. And they wrestle. So typically my day, I Monday through Friday, I go to Syndicate, a gym here in Vegas, and we do MMA sparring, train with all the professionals, and we do that from 11:30 to 1. Wow. And it could be big glove sparring, on the ground and pound MMA with punch, grappling. And it varies theme by theme, throughout the week, so we can work all aspects of our game. Then I always go to the gym afterwards, and I lift weights. I lift Monday through Saturday. And then I usually get done about 3 o'clock. And 2 of those days, because of this crazy school schedule, I pick my son up. The other days, we can get done a little bit later, and I go home, take a shower, take a nap, or eat, take a nap. And then at 6:30, we're back at the gym. But I don't train hard. When people tell me, oh, you train 3 times a day, I'm like, one hard practice is allowed. Then you can do some weight training or some, injury prevention, rehab stuff, whatever the case may be. And then you can do a technical workout. And that's what we do at night. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I basically hold pads for my daughter. We work striking orientated. And then on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we concentrate on the grappling aspects of the MMA game. And it'll be, hey, like this last Monday, we were working a certain position in the morning, and she had questions about it. So we worked it and drilled it on improving that technique Monday night. And so that's pretty much my every day. And then Saturdays, we like to go to Nick Best. He's a strongman competitor, was part of the history's strongest man.
Oh, wow.
And we lift really heavy on those days. And I like that type of training with him because obviously Monday through Friday right now I'm in the in a regular gym, but his house has implements, so the stone carry, yoke. And so I think that's very good for anybody who's a combat athlete, because it really is applicable towards what we do. It's moving things in different directions and angles that aren't necessarily just in a linear line like a bench press or overhead press. Now you have to lift up this bar and it's uneven on one side, and the technique of getting your hips in. So, and then Sundays, just eat food and stay in bed as long as I can.
Sunday's a day of rest for you. Hey, how's your body recovering from that? I heard you had a motorcycle accident Ron was telling me about. You got pretty banged up. Are you healing up from that pretty well?
Yeah, talking about the motorcycle accident that occurred in 2004, I broke my femur and heavily damaged my knee and hip. And I've had some things, but I mean, I've had injuries, torn labrums and shoulders, hips. And so that's why when people ask me, I still lift weights. When I'm not training hard at Syndicate like I was for the last couple of months, I really focus on the weight training. And it's not just to look better and feel better, but it's to move better. I think a lot of combat athletes, we don't lift during our in-season time, and they wonder why everything hurts. And I've speaking from experience,
sure.
You sit there and go, well, I'm big enough, I'm strong enough, I need to spend all my time on the mat or in the ring. It's like, lifting conditions the body and helps train your joints and, strengthen things up and kind of corrects some of the damage you're doing to it in some of your harder training. So that's why I'm still a huge advocate of lifting weights.
Nice. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I saw your fight with Brock Lesnar when you grabbed his leg and gave him a little submission. They did the butt tap on your butt that he was done. And I was pretty impressed with that, just that your ability to manipulation on him and take him out just by that. That was pretty impressive in the science behind all that.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of joint manipulation and joint locks and chokes, because the way I fight, even in a street fight, I have to strike you because we're at arm's distance length. Usually we're not fighting, we don't typically start off on the ground. And so I use my strikes to basically work in close to you. And then if you put something between me and your neck, I'm going to break it. And my idea is as I break things on you, you have less things. People tell me, well, I wouldn't tap. I'm like, that's not the objective of me breaking your arm. I broke your arm or I ripped your shoulder so that when I get to your neck, you now only have one arm to defend it with. Bone structure doesn't regard pain tolerance. Right. If I break your ankle, you're not walking on it very well. If I bust your knee, let's stand up and see how well you fight. It's not connected anymore. And so the ultimate to me is to get a choke. I want to, just like, my friends in the military talk to me about how instant incapacitation, where they want to fire around, through someone through the back of it. My idea of a street fight is the same thing. I want to instantly incapacitate you, which means I need to choke you. I need to stop the blood flow to your brain. And so ultimately, that's what I want to get to. And if you look at nature, that's how they fight. If you look at all the predators, they go for the throat. If you lions, tigers, I don't care what it is, if it wants to hunt and eat you, it's probably going to get on your neck, because that's the way to incapacitate an animal.
The animal kingdom, that's how they survive. True. Good point.
King of the jungle, man.
Yep. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time, Frank. I appreciate your time, and I know you're a busy man.
Oh, no, awesome questions.
And, my producer said, hey, you got to cut it off. We're at his time.
Oh.
So
no worries, man. Hey, I'd like to be back. Let me know. You guys will do it again.
Yeah,
if any of the fans have questions and stuff after what I've said now, we can go into better detail at a later date.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing another one in October. So I'm going to get with Ron, and I can get with you and see about doing another one in October, if you'd like.
Yeah, where are you staying? Where are you at?
I'm in Orange County right now, Irvine.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you were in Oklahoma, because I was like, if you ever, I'll be out there in October when you said October.
Yeah, Ron told me you guys are going to be hanging out and doing some training together.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Ron's a great guy. I really like the stuff he shows. He's very good combat mentality.
Yeah, he's the legend in this business. He's a mover and shaker. I call him Superman in the EP industry. The guy never stops.
I've sat in his car for an hour and seen how many phone calls that guy has to get through and talk. That guy's a problem solver.
I take Advil. I couldn't keep up with him. All right, brother. I'll let you run, and I'll be in touch, and we'll do this again.
Awesome. Thank you.